Clayton. The just absolutely two of my favorite Dolphins of all time. They played together for over 10 years, made a combined 8 Pro Bowls and many All-Pro appearances. Duper to this day is still the Dolphins' all-time leader in receiving. And I remember watching these two. They brought, for me, what was just the coolest swagger. I remember watching a lot of Bills games, and when they played the Dolphins, there were a few players that stood out in my mind that were just really cool guys to watch. If you recall, they used to show on NFL games before there was so many commercials. They used to like show guys coming out of the tunnel, and they used to announce the players' names before the games. And I'll never forget 3 of the players that just stood out to me as coming out, dancing and moving around and giving each other really cool high fives, which back in the day were awesome. The jump high five was a very popular move. But it was Mark Clayton, Mark Duper, and also shout out to Louis Oliver was another one who just 3 of the coolest guys and just really fun to watch. They were explosive athletes. Dan Marino, you could talk about Dan Marino elevated them to a certain extent, and I'm sure he did because he was absolutely amazing for his time. But just to kind of put into perspective what kind of duo we were talking about here, in that magical 1984 season, Dan Marino's sophomore season where he threw for then an absolutely unprecedented 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns, which might sound kind of pedestrian nowadays, the way teams play defense and the way the rules in the NFL catered to the offense. Back then, it was unheard of for a guy to throw for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns. So absolutely amazing. And of those 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns, 1,306 yards and 8 touchdowns to Duper, and 1,389 yards and a then record and still third most of all times, 18 touchdowns to Mark Clayton. And that's just not a guy that would leap off the page to most people and think, wow, you think of guys like, Jerry Rice, who has the second most, and Randy Moss, who has the most touchdowns in a season. You think of guys like T.O., you think of guys like Chad Ochocinco, Marvin Harrison. But actually, it's Mark Clayton with 18 that shows up. Just super fun guys to watch. I guess I don't have that much more to say, but just a huge Dolphins fan, huge fan of the Marx Brothers. Love these dudes. Number one.
You disappointed me. I thought it would be A.J. Feely to Marty Booker.
Oh, that's a good one. I almost went Jay Fiedler to Oronde Gadsden.
There you go. Poor Dolphins fans, because you still have to live with in Dan Marino's past.
In fairness, I had to go all the way back to 1983 to find a duo from the Dolphins. And my outside the box was finding a Dolphins tandem at all that could make the list here. But love the Marx Brothers. I'd be content with those two on any list.
You guys had a nice cornerback duo for a while. Was it Surtain and Madison?
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. That was the late 90s, early 2000s. Madison and Surtain, those boys were nasty.
Yeah, I remember those boys.
Yep, Sam Madison came out a little bit earlier, and then Patrick Surtain, who's son. This is how old I am now. Yes, Patrick Surtain's kid is about to be drafted. He's one of the top. I think he's a corner as well. One of the top corners or safes. Definitely a defensive back, but you'll see him splash onto the NFL scene next year. Yep. So one of the favorite duos from my young adulthood now has a son ready to come into the NFL. So,
think about Cecil Fielder. I remember Cecil Fielder hitting bombs in Detroit. He has a son, Prince Fielder, who's already retired from the MLB. He's already retired, and his dad was one of my favorite players.
It's absolutely wild. So Bryce, I wanted to introduce it here. You're number one now. This is one that you swapped. So I'm very excited to hear who your number one duo that you just recently put into your number one slot. Let's hear it.
Yeah, number one for me is obviously Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and that is a complete lie.
Those two don't really pair up very well.
I know, right? It's so bad in Philly. No, number one shooters. Is exactly. It's fucking 2020. You get shooters, not more centers. But anyways, I'm sorry. Number one. No, for me, it's an NBA basketball, and I became really into the game of basketball. I would say 2000 through 2001, and this is right at the peak of this duo's domination. And it's Shaq and Kobe. It's plain and simple. Obviously we know how it ended. And RIP to Kobe Bryant, passed away now. But the breakup between those two it got ugly. It got real ugly. And but them together was something that I've never seen on a basketball court before. And it was fucking ridiculous how good they were together. First of all, let's talk about Shaq. Let's talk about them individually. Shaq, probably, for my money, the most dominant NBA player I have ever seen with my own two eyes. And my money, again, the greatest center of all time. Like, literally, you couldn't do nothing to stop him. Like, I've seen him dunk on a whole team. Like, not exaggerating. 5 people under the rim, he's dunking on them. And then talk about Kobe Bryant. Michael Jordan is widely regarded as the greatest, not only greatest shoot guard of all time, but the greatest player. And Kobe Bryant is the closest thing I think we would see to Michael Jordan, and not only just his game, but also his mentality. Like, he literally tried to mirror everything that Michael Jordan did and damn near came fucking close to it. 5 championships, you know what I'm saying? So them together, that duo together was just unreal, man. I got some numbers here for you guys. All right. So since their pairing, they joined forces in 96. Kobe was drafted. Shaq obviously signed as a free agent from Orlando. But when they paired together, they have, first of all, 4 Western Conference titles together. All right. 3 of those resulted in championships. And they was the second team, the second franchise at three-peat, the third team to do so. Obviously, the Jordan Bulls did it twice. But the main thing, the 2001 playoff run that they had, in which they went 15-1. All right. The only other team to ever do this was the Golden State Warriors, the 2017 Golden State Warriors. They went 15-1 and damn near should have went 16-0, but it took a fucking crazy effort for my favorite basketball player of all time, Allen Iverson, and that Sixers team getting game 1 of the NBA Finals, but then they just gentlemen swept them. But that domination right there in that three-peat era is just ridiculous for those two. Combined 13 All-Stars together since joining forces, 8 All-NBA first-team selections, 3 division titles, and, of course, both are Hall of Famers as well. Yeah, man, Shaq and Kobe, I'm kind of glad as just like a basketball fan in general, and as, obviously I hate the Lakers, I hate that franchise, I hate the fan base, but as just a pure basketball fan, I'm kind of mad that those two didn't stick together, because if they would have just worked it out, if they just would have figured it out, man, we could be talking, another 6-7 championships for them together. And yeah, that duo right there is for my lifetime, that is the most dominant duo I think I've ever seen. And yeah, I don't think I'll see anything that's going to be coming close to them.
Pretty cool, man. One of my favorite memories of those two was the Western Conference Finals that they played against the Kings, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember specifically rooting against them. I just really happened to like that Kings team that featured Vlade Divac, Mike Bibby,
Chris Webber.
Yeah, it was
Stojakovic.
Yeah,
Christie.
Doug Christie. Yep.
It was a really fun team to watch, and I really enjoyed that series. That was one of the, again, with my spotty history with basketball, coming in and out as a fan, kind of paying attention from a distance. That was a series that I followed really closely, and I followed that Kings team very closely. And I just remember Vlade Divac doing his absolute best to try to guard Shaq. And I remember thinking, kind of like you talked about, these two are just unstoppable. What do you do with Kobe, who can hit shots from anywhere and distribute as well as anybody? And if you can somehow manage to slow down Kobe and Kobe doesn't kill you, you've got this, 7'3" monster under the rim that can just, bury you down low. So it was
who makes almost 60% of his field goals that he takes.
Ridiculous. And the thing about them as well, like you go look at their regular season numbers, and they're both averaging well over 25 points. And like you said, Shaq is shooting fucking 60% from the field. But then when they got to the playoffs, man, they just took it to a different level. Like they became different players. It was a stretch where Shaq was averaging fucking 40 points. And if Shaq is having an off night for Shaq is like 20 points on, whatever, 10 of 20 shooting. Like that's an off night for him. Kobe will pick up the slack and he'll go and drop 40 or 50 on you. So it was no answers. It was literally no answers. Like we just seen the Lakers win a championship, and we seen LeBron and AD. it was that, but like on steroids because of how dominant Shaq was. And then Kobe, like he's looked at as the number 2 option, but really you can look at it as option A, option B with those two, man. It was, man.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I've read up a little bit on the Kobe Shaq relationship and kind of, you know, how the turmoil, and it was very public. It was just kind of like right around the time where the media started swarming in on these guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when I was a kid, I don't remember the media being all over. That's, I think, why The Last Dance was kind of so eye-opening, because the media back then in like the 90s and stuff wouldn't focus so much on the drama and the personal kind of battles. But then in the early 2000s, that's when that shift in the media kind of took place, and they're reporting more on team chemistry and, you know what I mean, have guys sit around and talk about the game instead of showing the highlights sort of thing. So it was interesting to kind of go back and look. I mean, obviously I knew that they didn't have a good relationship. It was pretty well documented, but I guess Phil Jackson had said that the problem was more on Shaq's end, which I thought it was interesting, because I always thought that they seemed to try to paint Kobe in the worst light. Yeah. But you know, for him it was Kobe he wanted to be the best. He was like you said, he's the closest to Jordan that there's been. He wanted to be the best. He wanted to be perfect. You know, he worked hard. They said that Shaq kind of was lackadaisical because, I mean, you can rely on your 7'3", 350-pound body to kind of dominate on your own. You don't really have to work at your game, where Kobe was more of a crafty player. You know, he had to create his own game. He was smooth, but he would practice at his craft. So it was interesting to see that, that Shaq he wanted more money, and they decided, this relationship's too much in a turmoil. Stick with Kobe, which I think was the right decision. I think sticking with Kobe, franchise player, that was the right move to make. But like you said, if they had stuck together, if they had just kind of worked it out, it would have been something probably mirroring the 6 that Jordan and Pippen went through, maybe even, more than that, because those 3 years that they had won the championship, and even that 4th that you talked about where they didn't win the championship, unstoppable.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was really ridiculous what that combination, man. That, I might have to go back and watch a couple of Lakers games there, because that team was special. That duo was special, I should say. That is it, guys. We did it. We got through it all. Yeah, man, we made it.
Did 15 duos, or I guess 13 duos, actually.
Yeah,
there were a couple of repeats in there, but
did you guys have any more honorable mentions that I wanted to mention?
Did I mention Tony Gwynn and Cam Caminiti? I can't remember if I mentioned.
You did not, but now you did.
Yeah, Tony. I just love Tony Gwynn. It's weird. I'm down in Virginia and I teach in Maryland. And one of the students at my school, his dad was a major league pitcher, Doug Creek. He was just kind of like a middle reliever, lefty kind of guy, and he would come in for career day. And I talked to him, sidebar conversation with him, and I asked him who's the toughest hitters you've ever faced. And he told me Tony Gwynn and Ken Caminiti as a duo. He said he could not get them out. He didn't even try. He would just pitch around them. He said Tony Gwynn was by far the best pure hitter in the game that he had ever faced. And it's kind of like my RIP in memorandum of those two, because they're both dead now, which is crazy. So
yeah. An honorable mention for me is Tom Brady to Randy Moss. And just particularly for that one season, was that 2007 where the Patriots went 16-0. That combination that season was just ridiculous, bro. Oh my God. It was a match made in heaven. Like, you had the perfect receiver and the perfect quarterback, and they played on the same team. Like, the stars aligned, and we've seen magic happen all the way up into the Super Bowl. So that's an honorable mention for me. I wanted to squeeze them in there, but I was like, they didn't quite do enough together for me to put them in there.
Yeah, sports duos for me, when I was trying to think outside the box, one that came to me was, going with a non-athlete, but was going with like a coach and player tandem. So I kind of thought Brady and Belichick maybe would be up there. But no real further honorable mention. I mean, there's so many out there that that really just stand out. There's literally hundreds, of great tandems throughout the years. But I think all of our lists kind of were personalized, and I think that's the most important thing when you're doing something like this. Just to have a subjective opinion on it it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad we did this one.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode, guys. I appreciate you guys for going with this idea.